Oh, I got my moon on. Excuse me. I got eclipsed. I'm eclipsed
sun.
out. And the sun. I got eclipsed.
Okay, I think I'll call the meeting to order, and do we have a roll call on this?
We can.
Have a roll call, please.
Fitzwater. Here. Graham.
Here.
Henry. Hussey. Kemna.
Here.
Mihalovich.
Here.
Prather.
Here.
Schreiber. Here. Ward.
Here.
Wiseman.
Okay. Steve, do we have any housekeeping of any kind? Mark?
I don't think we do. No, I think we're ready to go ahead and start.
Okay. And I do have my eclipse glasses, so game on.
Game on.
Okay, well, with that, I think we're ready for the next departmental presentation, which would be Matt. So,
It's my turn?
Mr. Murray,
Okay.
you're up.
Ready to hear me? Guess we're using these, right? Okay, and I passed out, I have 10 budgets and 11 slides, so I'll try to go through them. Please ask questions as we go. I've got 3 division directors sitting behind me, so we should be able to answer any questions, but please ask questions as we're going, because we'll try to follow the book essentially and start off there. I think the first in the book, it's a little out of order. Central maintenance is before Public Works admin, but it's on page 202 is my recollection. And so first comment, we have several new people here and probably haven't discussed this. We used to have budget meetings in different formats. Several years ago we'd have small groups of councilmen meet with us. And so anyway, I thought, well, I'll just kind of mention how we go about putting our budget together. Basically, the staff and I sit down, we review all the line items and just every one of them, and then we look at those and make adjustments up and down, sometimes based on history, sometimes based on if we have a new thing or something we know we need to do. Example of that would be a few years ago, we knew we needed to replace a bunch of seals and kind of pumps and things like that in wastewater, so we put a little more money. We asked for more money in our line that replaces pumps. So we did the same thing one year with LED streetlights, for example. We asked for like $5,000 extra in that line. So these are usually minor adjustments up and down. And then the first section up there, I highlighted some big numbers that we kind of look at and kind of calculate a little bit. And one of them that we're always aware of or looking at is the CM parts budget. It's found in the CM budget, but and then I'm just kind of giving you an overview here. Doesn't follow the book just yet, but so the parts budget, big number. It repairs all the parts in the general fund, whether it's police car, fire truck, public works vehicle, pickup truck, weed eater, whatever. And so that's a pretty hefty number. We always look at fuel. Britt does a good job, and Eric and Mark. Basically, we get out on some use some various prediction tools that are widely available, and we use 2 or 3 of them, then come up with a guesstimate, because we never know how much fuel is going to be, obviously, and then put those in the various budgets. Chemicals for snow fighting is also a pretty good-sized number that is often debated by the council during these things, so we look at that, and we try to, depending on the year, I think only once or twice, I think we haven't filled up our salt bins at the end of the year, and that was because we had a really high price in salt that year, and we felt like it was going to go down, so we kind of delayed. That was a few years ago. This year we're full up. Materials and street and stormwater budget's a big number, so we always evaluate that depending on what we see on the horizon, our manpower, and then of course utilities and street lights, another pretty big number, and I'll go through some of those as we go through this real quick, but so that we kind of look at those, make those adjustments, and then look at those bigger numbers and try to hone in on some of those in a little more thoughtful, calculating way, because they're predictive in some nature. Personnel. Then we look at personnel, talk with all of our divisions, and see where we need new person. If we need new personnel, why do we need new personnel? And we try to always hold that steady. And in this year, we haven't requested any new personnel, and just only some minor adjustments we requested in, say, title or pay grade or something like that. Wage and benefits, obviously we don't have much influence on that. We kind of have a small influence from our level on that. Then we also look at training, which is what I have quite a bit of influence in. And if you'll notice as we go through this, there have been in all the budgets, we have a big staff turnover going on right now, and we predict it's going to continue, and you'll see why in a minute. But priority number one in most of the budgets is talking about succession planning and training, things like that. And really that's focused not necessarily on the technical skills, which we typically have focused on, but more about the management, mid-level manager training, and people skills, some of those soft skills, because we have over 122, I think is the number right now, of public works people out in the field every day, and they're in people's yards and doing things, and so they're making all the citizen contacts, not me. That's the majority of them, so we want to make sure they're equipped to handle those kind of things. And then, of course, then the next part is the vehicles and equipment, and that's kind of an age condition type thing, and we have some good graphs about that coming up here in a second. So that's kind of how we go about it. We put those numbers in, and so we'll just go right in. So I'll go ahead and, I guess if we want to follow the book, I'll skip to, I'll skip to central maintenance and then come back since we'll follow the book. But in central maintenance, and all the charts are organized this way. I just kind of gave you an org chart of where they fall. Central maintenance is in our operations division has seven folks. The operating budget's a little over $1 million, but that parts budget is almost half of that, $485. And like I said, that kind of fluctuates depending on the condition of our equipment. And then we did include some succession planning type things for our mid-level management skills in here as well as a pink sheet. What do? They repair all the fleet of the city with the exception of Parks and Rec. They do their own. And if it's a utility fund, those funds are charged specifically. They're not in the 485. They're paying their own parts. But so the fleet size, if you look at all the vehicles and equipment, they're maintaining about 480 pieces of equipment, and Britt's got a really good presentation about this, where it's from a weed eater to a fire truck, basically, or a bus. So they're doing all those various things. And upcoming challenge might be if you look at our fleet. I think it's no secret that it's probably getting aged. So the parts budget will fluctuate. Things will break down quicker. So we're just keeping that stuff in a good state of repair. So if there's any questions about the central maintenance budget, glad to answer those.
Any questions? Okay.
I'll try to go back one slide here if I can. Losing my arrow. Can you back up one slide for me, Clay? So the next part of the budget is Public Works Administration, which is basically 3 people, myself and 2 administrative folks. But just to kind of give you an overview, these are all in Public Works we have 10 budgets, and they're highlighted in red on the org chart where all the budgets are that we're talking about tonight. But roughly, in a round number, if you add up all the operation budgets, we're administering about $15 million worth of operating budgets. The capital is, varies from year to year. It could be a lot of that's spent out of the CIP, half-cent capital improvement sales tax, or maybe like wastewater, a bond fund. So some years we've, you add capital in, we may be administering $30 million of projects. It just depends. And a lot of that comes through engineering, flows through engineering and wastewater, things like that. Again, the budget focus is really about our folks we're having a lot of retirees in all these divisions, and really focusing on trying to keep people's skills or improve people's people management, those soft skills, not to mention their technical skills as well. So we also have a little program, many of you may be aware of it, where we call it our Core Mission and Values Program, and that's part of that as well, where we try to reinforce our mission and values to the guys and gals on a regular basis. And that kind of helps us deal with the public, I feel like, or if we have a little hiccup in that, we can point to those and say, how could we have done this better based on these type of values. I had one pink sheet item in the Public Works Administration that wasn't approved, is reclassifying one of our division directors to a deputy director. In other words, a kind of a definite second in charge. There was no cost to that one, and the reason we were doing that, kind of really 3 things. We kind of wanted to, I kind of thought it would be good to have kind of a person focused on three aspects that were, kind of new to us. One is this mentoring and these soft skills, working with kind of overarching all the departments, so we're being consistent. Two, emergency management duties, assigning that person, just like Lincoln Street, dealing with FEMA or whoever, assigning all those to one person, because right now we're working on a street and also a wastewater project we're trying to get money out of FEMA for. And then the third one, just a second point of contact if I'm out or whatever, where it's had to step in the past. So that's why I asked for that. And then as I look at that, what are my challenges, coming up? Really, it's this turnover, and we've already started it, but it's going to probably exacerbate here coming up. But I had a sheet, had somebody bring me a sheet. So these are all the people in the last 2 years that got a new job in Public Works. And so if you add all those up, it's about 25% people with a new job. And so that obviously has its challenges. Probably the best examples in our wastewater plant. Got our division director, Dave Irwin, retire, or excuse me, our manager out there, Dave Irwin, retire. Of course, then somebody moved up, then a new person got that job. And so, we've had they're all good people, but they're just new to the job, so it makes it not as easy to administer, I guess I would say. And then, with that workforce, can we, keep meeting the community's expectations? So, the budget, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. I think the budget's $378,000. 83 of that's the fuel for all of Public Works General Fund. The rest of it's more or less salaries and paper clips. Glad to answer any questions on that.
Right. Which of the performance metrics do you look at on, or feel like that guide you in some of the decision making? I'm item number 7 and 9, the number of days it takes you to have plans approved. To me, when we hear public say that, well, it took me a long time to get my plan approved, here's some evidence to suggest that happens within 15 days. And 7 calendar days for residential building permits. So I think those help us when we talk to people that are giving us.
Well, I do now in Public Works Administration. They're on page 210. They're probably a little less specific than that for Public Works Administration. Now, as I go through these budgets, I'm sorry, that was a building regulation one.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Was that just an example, or?
Yeah, give me an example.
The Public Works admin is really based on, division budget, personnel, kept in those positions that are authorized, things like that. So it's a little less, what would you say, directed as something like that. Now, some of the other budgets are like that, like street miles swept, things like that, are more specific, and some of these others as we go through.
I'm sorry, I grabbed the wrong tab. I meant to grab this tab here. With regard to your central maintenance, the average vehicle cost to repair is $21.77. That seems high. Every time you roll in a vehicle and roll it out, the average cost is $21.77. I imagine you must be doing some huge.
Well, and Britt, you can help answer this. However, basically, we're looking at what the budget is versus what we're fixing, and so I assume that's including not only parts but labor and things of that nature. So we're trying to get a full cost for those repairs. We might have a bus that comes in and it does $20,000 repair, which wouldn't be that unusual.
I think that's exactly right. We try to account for the full cost of that, which includes labor, and our labor rate is calculated every year to reflect the actual cost of that employee, and then it also is compared with local shops in town to ensure that we're accounting for that correctly.
Is central maintenance to capacity in terms of the fleet? If we grew our fleet by 20 or 30 vehicles, would that be a real issue for central maintenance?
20 or 30 vehicles, I don't believe that would be a problem. Can I give you a definitive answer when we're going to break over and we're not going to have enough A, space, or B, manpower to do it? It would be a very hard thing to do. What it would do is basically increase downtime. You know, it's longer, the vehicles are sitting in there before they get fixed. We still run into that as we speak now, but we prioritize. Obviously, when a fire truck comes in, it's one of our highest priorities. But in the middle of a snowstorm, when the plow truck comes in, it's the highest priority.
Good, thank you.
And I would also say that on just the facility, if you ever go down there, we can give you a tour, but you know, it's kind of a cramped facility, so we're constantly moving things in and out. So if you were to, say, increase the fleet, you know, considerably, there's not a lot of storage space there, so we'll move them across the street. It just exacerbates that time frame issue. And I think that's fair to say that it's pretty full often, but, you know, we work around it.
Go ahead.
So, moving on to the next one. Let's see if I can get my clicker to work. Oh, maybe I can. Let's go to the next one. There we go. Engineering. So on the engineering side, get to my tab here. I'm just trying to give you an example of kind of what they do. Is kind of in the org chart. Oh, there you go. Obviously, city engineer is David Bangy, and so, you know, they really it's separated into three sections. Our CIP design, which is our capital improvements program, have an inspection and survey component to that. Then we have another group that is development review and stormwater inspection, and then a third group is our stormwater and floodplain permitting, and that handles our complaints as it relates to stormwater. So that's kind of how we organize that group. As far as, you know, we have 12 people in that division, including all the inspectors and surveyors and everything. Operating budget about $1.2 million. The really it's a people-centered budget. I mean, you can imagine occasionally we'll need a new survey instrument. I think within the last couple of years we've gotten a new survey instrument, but, you know, electronics, they happen. But as far as a pink sheet item, we had a couple pickup trucks in there that were funded, and then we also, again, highlighting that issue of people retiring pretty quickly. We have 3 folks that are retirement eligible down there. All our registered surveyor could retire several years ago if he chooses to. Inspection supervisor also eligible to retire, and then our person that does the development review is another 26-year person. So a lot of knowledge there base, so when they start retiring, it probably won't be too long away, we're going to have to, you know, make sure we have people that we can replace them with. Upcoming projects, just to give you a flavor of what's next year. MSP, obviously there'll be something going on with that, I think, so we're working through our agreement still, so we anticipate some workload there. We're already working on our traffic study with Clark Avenue. We're trying to get some consultants on board. East High Street sidewalks, I think a lot of you have asked me about. That's under design, so we anticipate that coming out. We have another design on Missouri Boulevard sidewalks. That's a grant project. Our downtown electric we're working on. Of course, there's always stormwater repairs to do. And then we've been helping with parks and the Greenway Trail extension over off Edgewood back to Creek Trail. And then the new high schools. Obviously, couple big construction things going to happen. Not only the new high school, but then the remodeling of the old high school. And so that's going to have a pretty good component on our engineering division. And I'd be happy to answer anything about the budget if you have any particular questions.
I had a call from on KWAS the other day about Lincoln Street. Is that would that be in your planning right now?
Right. We would hope that it would at least get started before next budget year. And some of you asked me about it tonight, actually. And Britt, he's probably the most in tune with that. I might let him answer that question if he feels comfortable doing it.
Yes, we actually have, the consultant has given us 90% design plans for review. We received those, I believe, yesterday. I've got those on my desk, made preliminary, looked at them, and David Bangy, our city engineer, is also reviewing those. It's going to take some extensive permitting process through both the Corps of Engineers, potentially EPA, and other historical and cultural preservation folks, and then factor in the FEMA aspect of ensuring that we get all the boxes checked to hopefully get our money back or as much of our money back as we can. We're anticipating a late fall to early winter bid with construction completing. I was originally saying I wanted it for Christmas, but my birthday's in February, and maybe it's a better birthday present for us, given the external factors that are really beyond our control. But we are working on it as fast as we can.
So I know a couple of you had particular questions. That help you, or?
I just wanted to make sure that FEMA didn't hold us up, that we would be able to pay for it and get reimbursed from them.
This would all be a reimbursement process, but we have to ensure that we would have to do this regardless of whether FEMA was involved or not. There's a lot of permits that are required whenever you're excavating in and around a creek, a stream, a permitted stream. It does cause a lot of extra issues, and we're working through those as quickly as we can.
Any other questions? I have one question on your performance measure. If you have 722 lane miles to maintain, how many of those are how many resurfacing projects do you do in one season?
Well, it's and Britt can help out on this as well, but it's the lane mileage is that. However, some of it's concrete, and we do have it broken down, I think, on our GIS layer, but so not all of it's asphalt, number one. And so it's on a little different scale than that. But I think we've been getting around, Britt, what's the lane miles we've been getting as of late with the current bid?
I actually refer you to the performance measures for the street division, which is jumping a little bit ahead. Last year it was 2.3%.
And they're on page 217. You want to flip over there?
201's on, I guess.
Or the street performance measures.
Yeah, 201.
201.
What?
Well, the one that I'm looking at on my iPads is 201.
It's page 227.
Okay.
Oh, well, I got it wrong too then. It's 217. I don't know how that works. And that's something in Public Works and Planning Committee. I know when we bring our overlay package forward, we often give an update about, what the lane mileage is versus, what we have to do in the city. Kind of ties back to our 3-year list. As a percent, Britt gave you a percent, but as a lane mileage thing, I'm recalling from last time, it was around 15 lane miles, I think.
Yeah, I believe that's about correct, but I hate to say numbers that I don't know for sure.
It's on page 228. It is a measure under streets.
That was last year, was 16. We're trying to remember what this year's number was. It varies from year to year.
Yeah, it says 16.7.
Yeah.
And certainly we'd like that number always to be higher. It's funded through the half-cent CIP at a steady amount, so it kind of depends on the asphalt price, and make a pretty good guesstimate. But certainly a few years ago, I think we were a little lower than that, and I think we've come up this go-around through the half-cent sales tax this next 5 years.
Thanks. Any further questions? Okay.
So now we're in the street division anyway. So again, org chart, kind of what they do. We have a right-of-way inspector, so that person is different than a construction inspector in pretty much what they do is they're doing things like private work that are touching the right-of-way. If you're building a new driveway or something on a commercial site, this person would go out and work with you, or even some homeowners or utilities in the right-of-way doing things. And then the street division, it should be really street and stormwater division. What they do, they kind of have two sections. One is our mowing, signs and marking, street sweeping, traffic signals is housed in one group. And then different supervisors over the street repair, pothole patching, stormwater, and actual street repair. So Let's just give you a flavor of what they do. If you look at the budget, it's a little over $3 million operating budget. I listed three things there: chemicals, materials, and streetlights. Those about $1.2 million. I think that's what that adds up to roughly. So you can see there's some big pools of money there, like I mentioned before, that we look at, make sure we're trying to plan accordingly there. We didn't really have any major adjustments in the line items, but again, I go back to our retirement thing. We have 2 of our 3 supervisors out there ready to retire, and 3 of our 5 crew leaders, and some of them already. And so we've already replaced a couple of these folks in the line. So again, another important thing to us. A lot of these guys that are retiring from here have been here 30 plus years, and so or at least 20 plus anyway. And so we're, what causes me to lose sleep, the guy who plans all the snow fighting, when he leaves, his replacement and the training of that person, not only just from the knowledge of people skills and all that, but also the actual work. So, and these are supervisor jobs I'm talking about. I'm not talking about just our, maybe a pool of workers, but I'm talking about the supervisors. So I just want to highlight to people, it's going to happen because of retirements, but it's throughout all of our budgets, and I've really woken up to it in the last year or so because of our plant folks retiring is a great example of that. Then we had equipment replacement in pink sheets. We have, and I got a graph right after this, but the request was for about $622,000 of equipment. We ended up funding, I think, $171, and that was out of some savings. Again, we'll talk about that in just a second, but just kind of go down to those challenges again with those key staff turnovers. It's not many days go by that I'm not called by a citizen, hey, you had some people in my yard working and they did a great job and the supervisor was great to work with, and occasionally I get the one, hey, I had this supervisor, I didn't care for the attitude or whatever. So it's, that's going to be a challenge as we move forward, just to make sure people know how to interact with others. Of course, then you maintain your equipment at a high level of preparedness, and that equipment not only does day-to-day work, but may be called out for snow emergencies, ice, floods, all those kind of things. So this is the group that handles that. Downtown events, they support those, all these kind of things. And then, of course, what's really not addressed in the budget, and this is the repair group, but I thought this is a good place to mention it. We have obviously significant stormwater repairs that need to happen, but we're currently not, haven't asked for any new money. I think we've talked, obviously, everybody knows we've talked about a utility concept, and so that's not included in here anywhere, just so everybody's aware. And well, since I got one more slide here, the next slide, I'm going to let Britt talk about this one. He made it up for us, but one reason we chose just to highlight the equipment thing, and it's just, we are tracking it very closely. We track it every year. I started working here in 2002. This graph started in 2003. Britt started working here in 2003. So we've had a good handle personally on just this budget. And also, it has a lot of varied pieces of equipment. It has some very large pieces of equipment, some very small pieces of equipment. And so you can see the different levels of funding it has, but how it goes up and down, it kind of follows each other. And so, but I guess the main point of the graph is, you spend money, the useful life comes down where it's better prepared to handle things. However, if we don't, it goes the other way. And so we have this information, a lot of spreadsheets about this information in all the divisions, but I thought we'd just highlight this one. And Britt, can you just kind of talk through it real quick?
All right. Being engineers, we love charts and graphs, so we try to put something together for you, and which makes perfect sense to us, and probably most of you are looking at it like we had some crayons that we just wanted to use. But the blue line is our attempt at trying to explain the condition of the fleet over time. And we used, we take each piece of equipment and assign it what we believe is its life, and the easiest way to do that is years of service. So if you have a 10-year vehicle that you believe will last 10 years and it's 9 years old, it's got 90% of its life left. Obviously, you can run a vehicle beyond its usable, its estimated life, because every piece of equipment can vary depending on what it's seen in its life. But in our situation, we've taken the street department fleet, and you can see that blue line is decreased over time when back in '04 and '05, there was a significant amount of funds expended into the street department, and this is just the street department fleet, I should say that. And so you can see that life went down, which in this case is a good thing. But then after that, budgets were not able to sustain, and we pulled off on that investment. And you can see then that the expected life line began to rise and head toward that red area. Now, I'm not trying to be an alarmist or anything else like that. That's not the purpose of the chart. It's just to give you a kind of snapshot or an idea of what's going on over time. The red dashed line was our budget request. The blue line, the blue dashed line, is where we will would have been, with our request for vehicles. And the red line, obviously, budgets required that we weren't able to fund everything, and so that kind of tells you where we will be with the two different funding sources. Again, not trying to be an alarmist in any way. If we don't have when we have good employees, they will make it work regardless of what we give them. It's just so employees, I believe, is our highest priority, is keeping good quality employees. But at the same time, we try to keep them in safe and equipment that operates. Broken snow plows don't plow snow very well. So that's just an idea, a snapshot of what this is trying to show you.
And I think just to expand on that just a little bit, so in an ideal world, sure, if we were at 50, if those graphs were kind of in the middle at the 50% range, that means you would have 50% of your equipment would be new and 50% would be about ready to be replaced. That's probably never attainable, but being in that 20% range is not a bad place to kind of hang out. It means that our equipment's got some age on it, still got some life left, but we just monitor that and let you know what the request is.
Councilman Graham.
Thank you, sir. Matt, I have a question for you in regards to on the different departments that you've presented on so far. You've talked about the personnel and they're eligible to retire. I guess my question to you is, how much cross-training are you allowing within the department for those individuals who've been on the job for 10 years to actually work with those people who are eligible to retire and may be leaving, so that you can get some sleep at night? So how much cross-training is taking place?
That's kind of what we're doing, and that's our focus. And Steve and I talked about this. I'll find ways to do that. And for example, we're looking at, say, we have a crew leader. This just happened. A crew leader in our mowing area and street sweeping section. Well, he had been there a while. We kind of identified he had some good skills that we could probably improve upon. And so when his supervisor left with 40 years of experience in May, we had already done a little bit of training with this individual, thinking he might be the one that gets promoted. Of course, they have to apply and all that, but we do that and when we recognize people that we think may be eligible or want to do it even, so because there is more responsibility with that. But so that's kind of what we do. Now, if somebody would come to us and kind of through our some of our what we call our core events, where I get out and try to talk with the folks. I often cite examples of how people have maybe had some issue they have done well, and then through that we often comment, well, there's a lot of opportunity at the city. Talk with your supervisors if you're interested, and we know people are getting ready to retire and things like that. We want to hear from you and let us know you're interested, so we can help get you maybe some training that you think you might need to be ready for that experience. And then also, on the flip side, be ready for the experience. Do your job in a way that shows us and demonstrates that you're ready to move into a new job.
Councilman Fitzwater.
Yeah, I just had an informational question to help with this year's budget, maybe next year. As I was looking down the list, to me a dump truck doesn't improve efficiency. Obviously and maybe it does make it more efficient, but the street marking and paint truck, does something like that help us displace other costs? and make us more efficient, or is it more of a
No.
same? I'm just trying to look at
Yeah,
things
it's a great
down
question.
the road. Are there some of these things that help us
Right.
save costs?
I doubt that it would save costs necessarily. It's kind of a wash, and it's the equipment we have in here, the street marker, paint striper, whatever you want to call it. Right now, we have a version that is not as good. It's kind of it's mounted in the back of a kind of a large pickup truck, if you will. And so, the lines get a little squiggly, and it's not as good as a highway paint truck that's designed for this. Now, we've never had the major truck before, so it would be nice to have, but what we have does work, and the county actually has a large paint striping truck that we have borrowed on occasion. If we have major roads, you could contract it out, you could do different things. But if there was funds available, it would be nice to replace it with a bigger piece of equipment that does a better job. So it's really about quality instead of efficiency, I guess.
Council Lady Weissman?
Thank you. I noticed, and I'm not exactly sure who this question is directed towards, but I noticed in the budget, the chemical budget is $206,000, which seems like a drastic drop from what the requested in 2017 adopted was. And normally, when we look at some of these things, we're looking at an average, and I'm just curious why we've budgeted that so low on page 230.
Yeah, and part of that was when we did the mayor's budget, we pulled a little bit of the balancing money out of there for the MSP piece of that. But I think it's kind of an average dollar amount, always with the anticipation, in fact, expectation, that we may have to come back to council for a supplemental appropriation if it's a particularly bad winter. So it's a kind of a floating number, and we pulled some of the I think that's where we paid for some of the equipment out of this year. But the budget number was for the reason with the balancing number with MSP. And what that goes along with that, as I mentioned, is the expectation that, that's a place where, a particularly bad winter or even a little bit above average winter, we may have to come back for a supplemental appropriation, which is fully anticipated, not necessarily expected, but anticipated.
And that's a good answer. That's what I would have said. But
well, that's good. Let's.
But also, we have got our salt bids in, as I recall.
Yeah. Our salt bids did come in good. We did get good bids on our salt for the coming year. Haven't put pens and paper to see how this works, but we're going to be, have enough to cover an average winter. But if we get above average winter, that's, as Steve said, that's where we might be back talking to the council. If you could tell me how many snows we're going to get and how often it's going to be, I can tell you exactly how much we need. But
it's Farmer's Almanac, right?
But if we have, two light winters like we had, the last two winters we had, which were very light, we will be in very good shape with that number. It is a guess at this point.
Okay, thank you.
So we kind of run that pro forma, if you will, on the past history and look at where we're at on fill up. We're full now in our bins, and so that's what we try to do in the spring. And it's not been unheard of that we come back in the spring if we had a good salt price and fill them back up in the spring, just with a supplemental. So we'll continue that process, I assume, as we go.
Council Lady Ward?
I have a question, Matt, in regards to your second priority pink sheet. The Tantum truck, the snowplow, or the dump truck that you'll use an existing plow on. Was this the piece of equipment that was in the original budget last year that ended up getting pulled? Do you remember?
Britt, do you know the answer to that? I'll have to look here. Let's see if I can just.
We had pulled one piece of equipment to fund a street worker, I believe.
I'm sorry. The one I'm looking at on my I must be in last year's budget. That's the reason I'm all off on my numbers.
I did that earlier. Maybe I am.
The tandem axle dump truck was the budget item from last year, which was cut. It was the last priority was cut, and it obviously became a higher priority for us this year. We understand that budget requirements are such that we have to make cuts.
Well, I was just wondering, the heavy-duty pickup, which is third priority, was funded. In reading its justification, you can use it for plowing snow, but I was just wondering on what types of streets. I mean, are we in, I guess because the dump truck is a higher priority.
Well, they're both snow plows, and, we use it, the tandem axle dump truck will plow snow on our major roads, but that 550 pickup that is funded is also plowing on those residential streets and those smaller collector streets. So I can't put one above the other, and, the equipment that we have is still functioning. It is what we believe is at the end of its useful life, or we wouldn't have been asking for it,
Right.
but we will keep it on the road.
Well, in the rusting, that's a concern on the pickup truck. Is that a safety concern?
Obviously, rust is a terrible issue that we deal with on all our vehicles. That's the reason time is probably more of a determining factor than miles, say miles
Right,
are.
and you're dealing with salt, so
Right.
it's going to rust quicker. But you had a second request for one, and it also has the same concerns with the rust. So I was just trying to think if we should try to fit in the dump truck, or maybe, or instead add another pickup truck. I mean, I would hate. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think we're okay with the way it shook out.
Okay.
And like I said, just our procedure, we got to assign them a number. They're probably.
Right, okay.
And some of it's more of an art than a complete science. Once, if we have a budget amount like we did with our leftover salt money, we said, okay, we had, I don't remember the number, but 171,000. We look at that equipment and then we try to get the, fit in with that budget what we can. Now, you could look at it that way, but quite frankly, whether you took one or the other off the road, we're still in need, and actually we have a lot more of the 550 size trucks that go out and do the neighborhoods. So, and they don't last as long as a large dump truck, quite frankly.
So could I just add something to that? I think follow up and make sure I'm correct on this, Matt. But on your big sheet, the last three items that were not funded, so on the column 3, the last three that I think the last three are the ones that got purchased this year.
Correct.
So that's the 171,000 that Matt was talking about. So, those kind of are those bottom three are done. Now, which is the higher priority? I'd look for Public Works to say whether an engineering thing up there is a higher priority than something else. But as I started off with the budget, and I said last time and said it again this time, the personnel are the highest priority, and I think we're low on equipment all throughout the various departments. So, but it can be a little. Those three on the bottom were already are in the process of being purchased this year, I think.
And Steve said, let's spend this money, give me the priority list, and we gave it to him. From our standpoint, that it was these trucks that were purchased.
And just the relationship piece of that, I think that was mostly chemical related, and so we had a good year, and it made sense to be able to do that. And council, appreciate you authorizing that, because it also helps get ahead of the medium average winter that we're going to have.
Right, and this curve, it helps bring the curve
Yeah, it
back
helps,
when we
yeah.
get off the curve. So, and
But
we're not going to be shy about if we get way off the curve. And I told Steve earlier today, I had an example of, I think it was 2004 or something. We had to, I was just pretty new here, but I had to send the city administrator at the time a note that said, hey, we're not going to sweep streets anymore because all of our street sweepers are broke down and it's $80,000 to repair them. It just doesn't make sense to do that. So we're not going to run those through the central maintenance budget and blow that. We're going to come back to you and say, do you want to keep doing this process? If so, this is what it's going to take. And at the time, the council, you can see it in the graph, they said, yeah, that's what we want to do. That's part of that $842,000 number.
So for Public Works, but also the other departments, just because it's not funded doesn't mean that those aren't priorities that needed. It was just a matter of trying to balance whatever the dollar,
Right,
the cash piece of
I
that.
understand that. I was just trying to
Yeah.
figure out the
Which is the higher
condition
priority of the
of
ones
what
that are there,
was,
not funded, sure.
if it was a safety issue with the rest,
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and just to follow up on the, that is a top priority, safety. And quite frankly, that street sweeper thing also had a dump truck, and this is no joke, would not only turned right, wouldn't go left. And at the time, the supervisor said, you can't take it on a state highway, just keep it on a city street. So we said, no, that's not going to work for us. We're going to park that. So that's just a little comical story, but we do pay attention to that, and I think we're past those yeah, that's a very true story. I mean, and I couldn't believe it. I only worked here a couple years at the time. I was like, really? Okay. I'm sure our attorneys would hate to hear that. But, so we don't do that anymore.
We turn left.
We just go ahead and park
Left
them.
turn.
So they drove in a circle all the time.
I guess that brings us to the airport.
Yeah, and
Or
I
did
know
you have
Britt
another
already
question?
covered.
We did airport, and we
Yeah,
did, right?
just one thing I wanted to highlight, and it's in red. Again, another retirement. I asked Britt if he mentioned this. Again, our airport manager is retirement eligible, kind of a specialty job. When he does decide to retire, another retirement that we're concerned about. But, we're looking at our staff currently, and we don't probably have anybody at airport that is probably going to be the airport manager. We have some good maintenance people there, of course, but just wanted to point that out to you too. So another key position, So I know you all covered that last week. I'll go to the next one. Parking the same way, and again, I think I hadn't updated these slides fully before Britt showed them, and I know I went ahead and updated the pink sheet one on this that you all talked about, but also we have 2 supervisors in parking. I want to point out they're both retirement eligible. We think they're going to retire fairly soon, and probably very close to the same time. So here's another division with our management group, staff there, that we're going to have some turnover in. So that's just what I just wanted to make this is why, the sleeping at night thing. Unless there's any question about that, we can move on to transit.
Go ahead.
Okay, so transit, again, what do they do? Obviously have buses and paratransit, but we operate our 6 fixed routes, so those buses operate on a schedule on a fixed route, and then there's 3 trippers, and what those are, basically they're during school times, and they kind of run close to the schools and get kids out to the neighborhoods. 8 paratransit, so we have to have a complimentary paratransit service if we do the fixed route through our FTA regulations. And then, of course, a maintenance component to keep track of, cleaning out bus stops and buses and all that. So that's in our 26 people up there. We have an operating budget of $2.5 million, a lot of grants and things, and our revenue. You add all that together, it's about $1.5 million. So the subsidy is about 40%, just over $1 million. In the pink sheet, we did have, again, some succession planning. We had and various promotional ideas. I would point out that I said when I made this up originally, it had 2 mid-level manager retirement eligible. One of them was our bus trainer, and he actually had to go ahead and retire before I got to this. He had a health issue that pushed that. And then our other long-term employee there, we've already had a lot of turnover, but another fellow is eligible to retire as well. So we have pretty much a new staff besides those guys down there anyway. Just some challenges. I like to always look at that, and last fare increase 2007. So I think we've all talked about that in the past. Our ridership is trending down. This is in our performance measures. So it's down 3.5%ish. 300,000 rides per year, roughly, is what we as a round number. So it used 3.5%, roughly 10,000 rides out of that. Not a huge number, but the trend going down is not what we'd want to see. We'd rather see it go the other way. Probably a lot of that is gas prices being so low. People are able to afford maybe their transportation or go ahead and buy a vehicle then. But when the gas prices were up, we did see a bump in the ridership going up. Some of the other challenges: service New Jeff City High School. So I'm sure that's on the horizon. It's a big project that's going to happen when the new hospital came at St. Mary's. There was a request to have service there, and so we kind of came up with a plan. We actually ended up, it was an FTE issue, and we took care of that, but it's a route deviation, and we're running out there. Probably Mark Mamert's here, but every day we probably get a request.
Oh, yes. Yeah, more than once a day.
Yeah, and so we deviate the the route that goes out that way. Now, when you get to high school, I'm sure, we can say, well, we're not going to serve it, but serve it on the route deviation. But it does get us behind currently, so if we have to go to 2 facilities out there, it will put some strain on that. So we'll have to be thinking about that. And we've already, in our last bullet point, this transit study is underway. We've alerted our transit study fellow to that issue. Of course, our aging fleet and higher maintenance costs. That is a planned deal where basically we have these Gillig buses. You see the buses. They're a good bus. They're a high mileage bus. But there are planned maintenance costs in that lifespan, such as, it's escaping me, I don't know, it was transmission?
Yeah, transmission, rear end differentials, et cetera. Sure.
So,
brakes.
Yeah, even though we wouldn't get rid of the bus, we do have higher maintenance costs because they are aging. And that's all really related to grant availability, because they're a very high-priced vehicle. And so as those come up, we'll be looking at those. But I want to say they're a 12-year vehicle.
12 years, 500,000 miles.
That's the minimum lifespan that FTA will give you a trade-in on. So we're approaching those and maybe have exceeded in some cases. Just something to be aware of. Of course, our facility is fairly aged. It's past its useful life. We've had some studies in the past talking about that. It's basically a tin barn that has some offices in it, things like that, and our central maintenance is down below. But that facility, we keep replacing doors and roofs and various things and components, so it is an aging facility. Probably one of our older ones, I guess. And then, of course, the implementation strategies from anything that comes out of our transit study that's underway that Campo folks are helping us with right now. So I'd be glad to answer any questions about the budget. Again, similar to some of the other budgets, one of the things, since it's a utility, we track its maintenance costs and fuel separately, so that's another thing we kind of, again, I alluded to, but we look at and put those in the budget.
Council Lady Weisman.
Thank you. I have a question about the Honor Flight Outreach Program.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
That's the pink sheet item
I didn't
that
go
was
over
not
those.
funded.
Yeah, I meant to go over those. I just got sidetracked there. Let me talk about all those. So again, the promotional ideas. Basically, all of them are kind of focused on a couple things. Ridership, number one, and number two, just promoting the item among the community. But I'll just go through each one real quickly and start with the Honor Flight since you asked about that one. So we've been approached about, can we help sponsor and take folks to the airport from town, some of our veterans, and we think that would be a good thing to do. It introduces, number one, we'd also get in the promotional material, but it's just a nice thing to do for our veterans. But things like that we can do at low cost to promote transit, maybe get a few people that ride it. Some of them have folks that travel along with them to help them, and so introducing a few more people to transit is not a bad thing either. So did that answer your question about honor flights? Yeah. So it's just a promotional idea, trying to get some good PR out of it. And another thing, we haven't done this in the past to a high degree. A lot of these promotional things, haven't put them in the budget. But we said, we're always doing with the same thing. We'll never get any different results. So we thought we'd throw a few things in there and see if anybody liked them. Bulk pass, this is another idea. And so where if you came in and bought, say, $500 worth of passes, you would actually get double the amount of rides. So for people buying in bulk. So we do have charities that come to us, Salvation Army, various churches, and they buy, 300 rides, $300 worth. They get 300 tickets. So trying to maybe cast a wider net for that. Maybe there's an opportunity to work with, say, our university, Lincoln, if they would be interested in buying a bulk purchase of those for the students. Hospitals, our hospitals tend to buy several bulk passes, so they have them on hand and can hand them out to patrons. Like St. Mary's, I know, does this to help people get back into town. Churches, other charities, things like that. So that was the idea behind that. One of the issues is, since we have a subsidy, if somebody comes in, we're running those buses in the same circle, if you will, all the time. So if we get more riders on them, it's a net net increase in our revenue. That's the way I would look at it. So if I can entice a group to come in and buy a significant amount, $500 worth of passes, I'm really only saying I'm adding my revenue out of my subsidy. I'm putting it back in the revenue side. So it's kind of an idea, something different. But in accounting wise, it shows up on the ledger, I guess I would say. The promotional idea in there, if you're try to get you to the right page here, it's back on our pink sheet items, but you got the page number there, anyone?
278.
278 is where we're at. But basically that's, another, saying that I think it's $11,000 there is basically 1 month free rides, again, trying to promote. We do a free ride day, but that's as far as we went with that. Many transit agencies, you'll see them, they'll have a free week or a free month or something. So we said, well, we could do it all in 1 month or do it all 4 weeks separated, something like that. So that's what that would get you. And then other community events, we already have kind of dipped our toe into this with a couple things. One, the concert at MSP, where we had a little shuttle service. So really it cost us fuel and driver time. But get maybe people that wouldn't normally ride transit would get on the bus, say, oh, this is a nice clean bus, maybe I'll try this to go to work one day, that kind of thing. And it's just a nice community service as well. Another aspect of that is just having people in the city are paying for the transit through the subsidy, obviously through their general fund, and it gives them if they don't normally ride it on a regular schedule, maybe this would give them an opportunity to say, well, okay, that's useful to me during these events. And so just thinking of things like that. Another one we've been approached about is having cooling stations during 4th of July. If it's really hot, we would park a couple buses in areas, and big diesel motor, you can run the air condition, you can jump on the bus, get cooled off and move on. Things like that. We're actually doing one now. Our current budget for the eclipse. Go ahead and say it. We've had it in planning stages, but we're going to have a shuttle north of the river and back. We have a lot of people over there. May want to go back and forth, so we're going to try to run a couple buses to support that event. We're going to have we found out, I think just today, really, that we're having a significant amount of people coming into the airport. Some larger jets have been diverted here. And so we kind of worked it out with our airport manager and some of the folks over there that if they have a group of people that need to get over here to call our transit division, they'll have the number, and then we can deviate from just the other side of the highway to go over, pick those folks up and bring them onto this side of the river. So just little things like that. They do add up over time if we do very many of them. Just wanted to make you aware of them through pink sheets. So we'll do what we can within our current budget, but if we want to try to move forward with any of those, that's one way to do it. I think all of them together add up to about $16,000.
Any questions? Right.
Sorry.
Yes, Council
I
Lady
can't Ward. find the line item now. A while ago I saw the advertising. Last year it was 15, and this year
Yeah, on the
went up
revenue
to
side.
20. Could you explain that?
On the revenue side?
Excuse me?
On the revenue budget?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's in the revenue, I believe is what you're referencing. On that, we have a contract, and it has a minimum floor that they have to provide the city. And I don't have the line item right here in front of me, but if Margie or somebody could help me. I believe we budgeted at the minimum level they have to provide us, but they've been beating the revenue essentially every year. And so I think we try to keep it towards the minimum. That's the difference.
I guess if you're ready, we can go to the next one then.
Okay. Whoops. Can you back up one? There you go. Wastewater Division. So this actually has 3 budgets, but I put it in one slide. So what they do is we have an administration budget, a collection budget, and a treatment plant budget. And administration is basically Eric Seaman sitting here behind me, and one of our engineering folks, and they do the administration of it. The The collection side, they maintain all the collection system, all the lines that the sewage runs through and on the manholes. And then our treatment plant, not only do they do the treatment plants, but we have 38 pump stations around town that we're maintaining. And so all three added together, about 36 FTEs. The revenue for wastewater is close to $13 million this year. The operating budget is 5.6-ish million. And so what's the difference between those two? Well, the difference is that the majority of the other money, I would say, goes to making the bond payments, and that which has helped keep our rates where they're at. And so that whole revenue model was built off what our bonding capacity is. So if you look at the fund reserves, hopefully I got this right. I called Margie about it maybe once or twice to try to make sure I can decipher it. But simply, our fund balance in the 2016 audit, it's about 34% there at $4.3 million. But if you look at the system as a whole, there's some reserves that you have to keep for bonds, and then there's some other accounting things, I guess I would call it, Margie, about retirement accounts and all of those. So if you added all those together, you could say, well, we have 77% reserve, but really you're really focused on the 34%, and I think some of that's in your big sheet here too. I'm just trying to decipher these numbers a little bit for you. So I guess the assessment from my point of view, it seems fairly healthy. I think we have a guidance thing here at the city, just a local guidance that we'd like to see at least 10% where that 34 number is. So we're beating that pretty good. The pink sheet summary, all were funded. Again, back to our discussion of people eligible to retire. We have, I think, 3 of 4 are eligible to retire in the next 2 years, and 2 of them are already eligible to retire. I don't think they're going to retire as quickly, but we want to kind of identify, I think back to Carlos's point, or Councilman Graham's point, is that we're trying to see people who might be interested in those jobs and we think have some good skills, that we're trying to mentor those folks to take those over. Already happened in the collection, or the treatment plant side, like I mentioned, Dave Irwin and some of the other folks out there have retired and moved on, so that's already kind of woke us up to the issue, really. And then we have several equipment replacements, again, back to that scheduling of equipment. Our challenge is coming up, so we just instituted the last planned rate increase that council had planned. I think it was 6%, but it went for a period of how many years? 7 years, yes. 2010, I guess. So back in 2010, when they went for they looked at the bonding issue, they had a 7-year plan to increase rates every year. And so we just did the last one of those this year. So that will be a future discussion, probably in the coming year we'll want to talk about. So we're at the full bonding capacity of that rate structure right now. So we've captured all of that money. And then and what that really boils down to is our capital construction program will drop. I think this year, Eric and I have been discussing, once we kind of look at where our projects are, we'll probably still have another $4 to $5 million in there to do capital projects this next year, the 2018 budget. It's already in the budget because it'll be left over from projects. And once we spend that, we'll be dropping off after 18 to about $400,000 a year in capital money. And how sustainable is that, and for how long without more rate increases and things like that. And so the trick is, most people use some form of bonding and borrowing. You wouldn't have to, but if you're under a consent decree and have to pay as you go, that's where you see a lot of communities have, instead of our $30 for your house for a sewer, they may be paying $90. So we don't want to get in that boat. So we need to talk about that. And of course, that's all driven by regulations, much of it. We don't always know what the future regulations are. I think we have a reprieve right now, but you never know in the future. So we'll be keeping an eye on those, and it's something we closely monitor through our organizations we attend and things like that. But I'd be happy to answer any questions. It has performance measures as well, miles of sewer cleaned and all of those things. I think we're doing a good job there.
Any questions? Thanks, Mr. Marash.
So I got just the summary of what we get. Again, I think I echo what Steve said. Having good employees, well trained, that's our priority. I don't want to give you these graphs about equipment all over the place and sound like I'm an alarmist or anything. But, having good people to operate this stuff and interact with the public is priority number one for us. I don't have much, as much say in 1 and 2, but I can certainly work on the training part. Priority 2 is, of course, then the tools and equipment, yes. And I found this little quote that just kind of, I was reading an article from Richard Branson. He's kind of a colorful character, but he kind of nailed it for me, is you train people so well that they can leave and go anywhere, but you treat them good enough so they'll stay here and work for you. So, that's kind of our line of thinking when we put these budgets together.
I certainly appreciate the work you've done, and also your mission and values core is dead on. That's terrific.
Yeah, we try to make it universal so it fits all of our people, and then and quite frankly, I stole a lot of that from a company that does this really well, that my wife's involved with. So it makes it a little easier for me. Of course, they have lots of money to do things with their employees. We don't. We do it on a shoestring, but the goal is still the same. We want to interact with our customers, do it in a good way. But, what's everybody's job? Well, we're out there to improve things.
I tested one of your employees the other day, asking what core meant, and they had it right off.
Good.
Britt did a great job.
Well, it's on everybody's shirt. If you go out in the field and you see a guy working in your yard, you'll see it's on their shirt, just a constant reminder. And so, it's had a real positive impact, I think, and all of our supervisors have taken to it well. And so if we ever have an issue, we can turn around and point right to that. How could we have done better thinking about these things right here?
Okay. Does that wrap it up for you? Okay. Any further questions for Public Works? Thanks very much. Any comments? I think are we ready for Parks now?
All ready for me, all right.
That's right.
Well, I think first off, our 2018 budget is going to be pretty similar to last year, so there's not a lot of changes. I will tell you that I've been here a year and a half now. We started last year by forming a budget subcommittee from the commissioners, and 4 folks from the commission that worked very hard on last year's budget and even got started a little earlier this year. So it was a good team effort between staff and commission members that put this together. First, I want to talk about kind of really the only major changes I would say on our budget. There are 3 major personnel changes. First is an upgrade from a crew leader in our golf course to a golf superintendent. We're adding a full-time in parks maintenance, and we're also adding a full-time as a cultural arts recreation specialist. So this was the first year that we have taken on the leadership of the Cultural Arts Commission that was kind of formerly under the council. We've taken on that responsibility, and we're going to really promote that. And the first way we're going to do that is we're adding a full-time position that we're going to see a lot more arts in the park and working with all these different groups and with the community. So that's the first thing. Our budget.
Can I stop you right there?
Oh, sure.
Is the Cultural Arts Commission, is some of that paid out of our general fund, not the Parks Fund?
There is, I believe, a $7,000 line item. $6,000 line item from there that's paid to various groups for what's called mini grants that have been going on for a while.
And, I think this is just one council person speaking, but as long as we're paying for that throughout our general fund, I noticed in their the committee that they're to at least communicate with the Parks Commission once a year.
Correct.
Maybe we should get updates since we have some skin in that game. And
I agree, and I think there's some language in those code that says the Cultural Arts Commission is to report to the City Council, I believe, once a year as well.
I thought that was changed just to you all, but maybe
but if not, it will happen. Okay. Yes, and there is a commissioner that's also a voting member, I believe, of that commission as well. So that we'll definitely keep you informed of what's going on with that money.
Thank you.
Yes. So our 2018 budget will focus on a few things. The first thing would be our master plan. The second thing will be the beautification of our parks. I feel like many areas of our parks, it's one thing we're going to really focus on this year. Many areas of our parks have been really overgrown. not only our creeks, but parks and different forested areas that we have in our parks have been grown over with invasive species. That's one thing I think we've neglected, and we're going to take a special focus in that this year. We're also, another main focus of this particular budget, we're going to continue to focus, as we started last year, on the cost recovery and efficiencies of all our programs and facilities. As you see in some of the graphs, most of our programs and facilities are heavily subsidized. The major one in our budget is nearly a $900,000 subsidy just in our recreational programs and the offerings that we have there. So we're going to take and make that a major focus of our budget. We're also going to work on the branding and marketing of our department, and we're really going to take some time and spend some money on finding out what the community wants, what the community needs, and then taking that information and bringing that into reality. That will work directly also with our master plan project that's going on. Another focus in the 2018 budget and that's included in our budget is to really focus on connecting some of our trails that we have through the community. We have a wonderful trail system, and we have some really good, I think, opportunities to make some connections to really broaden our trail system. So that's going to be a focus that we'll have. So 2018 will be our first full year of operations at the link. It's going to be an exciting time. It continues to progress and meet more needs for the community. Tournaments and special events continue to grow. Our first few months of opening, we had nearly 20 tournaments that were already scheduled in that facility. This year, we've already exceeded that number, and we're not even really into that cycle yet. So people are finding out they've had good experiences, and that number is growing already. So we're excited to see and really focus on that. And it's difficult to budget because those tournaments that we do, it's not a huge number, but it's a growing number in that revenue. But I think the benefit that we'll see, not directly, but I think all of us as a city, is just the number of teams that are coming in here and how that financial impact we'll see in all departments with those sales tax numbers. So we're excited about the first full year. And so not only on the tournament side of the things at the link, but membership and fitness classes and group exercise classes that we'll be doing that we're really gearing up for, that we're working with Lincoln, hiring good staff for different classes, and really focus on marketing the membership to the community. That will really start in earnest in January. We've been doing a few things here and there. People have been telling their friends, and we've gotten a good following so far, but it will start very good, very strongly in January as we look towards, people. That's in that particular area, we always say thank God for New Year's resolutions. So we'll get together a great plan, and people will see a nice increase at that point. The two things, before I conclude, two things to bring out, I think that's worth pointing out, kind of like we talk about with the arts and having some money that's going to be from the general fund. We receive two areas of income from the general fund. One is for City Hall maintenance, and the other is for street tree maintenance. And those are areas I feel like as we move forward and as we get into what that means and how much that is. For example, for City Hall maintenance, the Parks Department receives $10,950 from the city's general fund every year. That number hasn't changed since 2008. And I think what we're trying to do is make sure that this building, this block, has a better presence. And I think we've seen that. I know I've heard from Steve, and I've also heard from Chief Schrader that we're starting to see a difference there, and I think that's important for our community. And I think at some point in the near future, I'd like to have that conversation about, 2008. I think it's easy to say that certainly the folks that we're paying, those costs have went up, and I think that's something to look at. The other area is the $25,000 that we receive for street tree maintenance. And many years ago, when the ordinance was written, that the parks would have the forestry division and have a city forester that would identify dangerous and trees that need to come down. That role was certainly something that made sense, and what I think it's went into is this this time where whenever there's a tree that comes down in the city street right away, or any kind of city, a dangerous tree, we're the ones, the park department has taken it down. And that $25,000 number has been in place since the 2013 budget. Before that, from 2008 to 2013, that number was $45,000. What I've had JJ look at, and especially in this year of what we're budgeting for, because I want my forestry division there's about 6 employees. The main focus of what we're going to be doing this year is beautifying our parks. And like I said earlier, we're going to be going into some of these creeks. Wares Creek at Washington Park especially is a big one. Riverside Park has a bunch of areas that have been overgrown, and you can't see from one side of the trail to the other. So we're really going to focus on that. And I think with that comes, it's going to be troublesome to always be able to hit those street trees. So I think at some time during this fiscal year, we need to have that conversation. What we're finding in the last couple of years is that for just maintenance of street trees, taking those down are dangerous trees, instead of hiring company, we've been doing it. We've identified we're spending between $75,000 and $125,000 a year just in that area. So I think it's something to talk about. So our budget shows we're going to end. We're looking at $7,345,728 in expenses and revenues, and with that, about $88,000 will go back into our fund balance. That'll be a reserve that will transfer back into our fund balance. And our fund balance, even after building the link of about, spend about $7 million there, we still have about $1.5 million left in our fund balance to spend over our reserves. So I think that's a real strong place to be, especially as we look towards the improvements that we want to make park system wide, that we're going to find out what the community tells us during this master plan process. So I feel like our budget is strong. And again, the commission worked very hard on this for the last few months. They actually officially voted on it on Tuesday, previous Tuesday, and it passed with the commission unanimously as well. So that's the Park Department budget for 2018 in a nutshell. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council Lady Ward.
How many trees, you may not know this right off the bat, but how many trees annually do you think you are removing in the city easements?
That's a great question. I can get that number. That would be a good number to have specifically, and I can send that out to everyone. Yeah.
Because I know it is really expensive to take down a tree.
Mm-hmm. And depending on
kind of frightening. So when you get them,
correct. There's a couple that we're doing now that we've had to identify them, and they've actually been personal property owners, but still our forester has to go out there and identify whose it is. The city will come out and survey if there's ever a question, and a couple of those trees are anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 per tree to take down. So, and we have lots of trees in our community. Yes, it is. It's a great thing. And that's the thing. I think that's a part of, we're going to keep working that. We're going to keep making sure we're taking out the bad stuff and putting in good stuff, and it make our forest even better. Yes, get rid of them all. Yes, please. Yes.
Questions? Of course, we have a capable commission that reviews your budgets in great detail, and appreciate the work of that commission.
You bet.
I do have two curiosity issues. One is the master plan. What stage are you in that, completing that?
We're in the really the initial development phase of all the parks. So they've identified basically 12 of our major parks. They've already got 6 concept drawings done, and they're going to work on another 6, and then a few various smaller ones too. So sometime we're hoping in October, then we're going to be able to get the information out to the community for the citywide kind of public charrettes. So we can take these initial drawings of, we sent out a survey that went, well into the community, so we got feedback to begin this process. Now we're going to get some of the drawings done from the things that we've heard through those surveys, and invite the public to view those and to give feedback and input, and we like this, we don't like this sort of thing. Oh, you forgot about this, so make sure that's in there. So around about October, we're hoping to have those things, and at that point, we'll it'll be close to being done. So sometime this winter, it's going to be ready to go, and that's going to be a working document. That is going to be something that we're going to look at every day. That's going to be something that we're asking for the public's input, and it's going to be used.
Great. The second question that I had curiosity is the operations of the multi-purpose. It seems like you really bumped the budget way high on what it was.
Yeah.
I assume you're learning some stuff, and is that personnel? Is that just what it's going to take to run the facility? Or?
Yes. It sure is. That's a great example of that kind of facility. It takes money up front to produce revenue. So if we don't have the number of classes that people want to see, if we don't have the number of events or leagues or whatever, if people, if we've got to increase the expenses certainly to see that revenue. And it's basically a 3-year process before we're really going to know at what level we're going to need to operate at. And so, this first few months of this particular fiscal year has been, it's been a shot in the dark. And next year, again, we have no idea, but we're doing a best guess of my experience, my staff's experience, and talking to other people. So it's a tricky, and it's a little bit, it's anxious times, but we're on the right track.
Well, and I just want to add that Todd had mentioned earlier, the 2018 budget is the first full year for the link.
Okay.
So the 2017 budget, I don't even think it was 6 months of operations was budgeted.
That makes sense, okay.
Yeah. We opened in March.
Yeah.
Basically, yes.
And then the last question is, are you at liberty to say what your land acquisition is going to be? Looks like there's money in for land acquisition.
Oh, no, there's nothing. That's something I think we put in every year, at least the last couple of years or the 2 years, 2 budgets I've been through, we put in, and I know in the previous years. It's always, I think, good and smart to have that set aside in case an opportunity comes up. But nothing is on the horizon.
Thank you. Any questions? Thanks, Mr. Spalding. And
yeah, there's
yes,
just two small changes.
Sorry about that. I had those.
Do you want me
First
to cover
one,
it?
yeah. Well, sales tax revenue, after we got the final numbers that we didn't get included, $25,000 our sales tax revenue will increase based on your all's...
to be consistent with the 1% growth.
Okay.
So that's the one. And then on expenses, we're increasing line item 21-990-577070. That is the link capital replacement fund, and that's a number that we just kind of got comfortable with. That's a number that was in the MOU that we're holding back a percentage of our budget to be put in kind of a rainy day fund should bad happen. So Lincoln is also putting a number, and we're putting a number in. So this is a more accurate number. It's going to increase $31,000, $31,230. It will take that number up to $72,000. So those are the 2 changes. Yes. Did I cover that, Margie?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any comments?
I don't think there was anything else from us.
Very good. That pretty well runs through the budget presentations based on my notes. And I think we'd agreed that we will start our parking lot after that. So maybe next meeting would be a good time to start the parking lot and start deliberation over things we want added or changed, or we just might take a motion to accept. Not likely. I sense this might be a good time to adjourn. Are there any further business? I call us adjourned.